Hi everyone, so we are going to carry on with the test that we started yesterday. We're on question 32 now. Again, we're going to go through this more in exam mode so you can kind of get the sense of how it should feel, what kind of pace you should be moving at in an exam. Obviously a little bit slower than that, but the kind of methods and things that we're going to use are all to save time and keep us moving. So we're starting with a problem-solving question here, and this is a fairly typical style that you might see. They ask you to find the word ear as it's represented in the code. Obviously we've got code here and the words that we have been given, so we know the code for these words, and then using this we eliminate and we try to find E, A and R. So let's just go and make sure we don't miss anything from the actual question explanation. So in this passage, in this particular coding system, letters of the alphabet are represented by 2-character or 3-character combinations of O, plus and minus. For example, the letter A is represented by O plus, and the letter Z, which is useless to us, is minus O and plus. So I won't even bother writing that down. So we already have the A element. So we now need to find E and R. I can see from here that E is in this word mend and R is in this word runny. So it clearly is that to find the rest of this, we need to know N, we need to know how all of this works together. So we can start off by looking at and man. So A in this one is this letter here, and in man here it's this letter here. So we already can basically figure out the rest of these letters because minus plus plus is going to be N. Let's just start keeping a note of everything. And then M is minus plus minus. We don't actually need that. So actually, let me just actually not write that down because it's got no real relevance. Oh no, sorry, we do need it for mend. Let's just write everything down. Okay, and then from here, we therefore know that N is minus plus plus here, which makes D minus 0. Okay, so then we go on, we can again identify M as being minus plus minus. We know that D is minus 0, and then we know that N is minus plus plus. So E is plus plus. We then need to find R, so we can do that by looking at this final bit here. So we know that N is minus plus plus, so runny here. We don't need to know that, so we can just ignore that. And then we've got these 4, 0, 0 plus 0 to represent R and U. So R must be 0, 0 because it's 2 or 3 character combinations, and obviously we can't have one just be the one character. We can then just look through our answers and match it up, and that is the same as this one here, A. So just work through it slowly but surely, don't rush yourself, but there is obviously a clear method for this one, so there's nothing to panic about. Okay, now we're looking at a strengthen the above argument question. Usually there's only one strengthen per paper that I've seen, but actually in this one there's 2. Nothing to worry about, just something to note, I suppose. So we're going to read through. Again, I'm going to try and explain what each sentence is doing in the passage, what the purpose of that passage is, what the purpose of that sentence is. So this first sentence, over the past few decades, again, is introducing our topic as it usually does at the start of these paragraphs. And in this case, we're talking about companies having developed sustainability initiatives designed to improve their environmental performance across a range of different things. So at the same time, there's been an increase in award programs designed to recognize these achievements. And unsurprisingly, we're seeing that these awards attract criticism and skepticism. While some of the awards may not represent meaningful progress, we shouldn't dismiss or reject them entirely. Hopefully you can recognize by now that this is the main conclusion. They basically disagree with the people who say that these award shows are not do not represent meaningful progress. Why is that? The rest of this passage will tell us. So it will say that many are awarded by judging panels that include representatives from environmental organizations. Moreover, and then it just kind of gives more points as to why this is actually a good thing that we've got these awards shows, and it's things to do with it helps to gain support for sustainability efforts, and it brings it up to the senior decision makers at a company. So we get the whole gist of it. The main conclusion is that the increase in award programs designed to recognize achievements in improving environmental performance by companies is something that is actually a good thing for a variety of reasons. So we need something that supports that. Maybe another factor that also says something along the lines of, yes, this is another benefit of an awards program, or this is another reason why it's actually not a bad thing to do. We'll just skim through and see which one this might be. So it would be B here. So the award programs provide a way for companies to learn about environmental management advancements within their own industries. So the whole point of this argument is saying that it is actually good for the environment. There is an environmental objective by providing of these award ceremonies, and obviously this point here supports that by saying you can also learn more, so these companies are being educated at the same time. Okay, an assumption question now. Okay, so identify the conclusion, the argument, and then what needs to be true in order for this argument to work. So a common method of punishing minor offences such as speeding or dropping litter is to impose monetary fines. These fines aim to deter people from breaking the law. So a very simple kind of this cause and like something happens and then you get fined for it. However, it is evident that fines are an unfair method of deterring and punishing people. Why is that? If caught, wealthy people will be able to pay it off with no trouble. Therefore, they're not going to be deterred by this punishment. Poorer people are going to have to borrow money or go to jail or whichever, which is disproportionately negative for the minor offence. So the conclusion is that it's evident that fines are an unfair method of deterring and punishing people, and the reason is because this fine is a smaller proportion of income for the wealthy compared to those who are poorer, and so we shouldn't do that. It's just not fair. So let's look at what assumption needs to be true. With assumption, it's difficult to predict. You do have to go through and read the options. With this one, maybe I'll do a knockout just to show you how you might think about it. So A, there are other methods of punishment that are fairer than imposing fines. Does not matter. There may be fairer. We have to argue why this one. We need a sentence that says why this is not unfair, or what this needs to be true for it to be unfair. People are aware of the punishments they will face if they are caught breaking the law is clearly not it. Poorer people are more likely to get caught is also not it. We're not talking about, you know, the prevalence of who's being caught, who's being fined. We're talking purely about the punishment itself. Is that punishment fair? An offender's wealth does not affect the amount they are fined. So this would be the answer. So if this is not true, if it is that the more wealth you have, the higher amount you are fined, then it's no longer disproportionate. Then you are paying a proportionate amount of your income. It doesn't say specifically how much you would pay, but if they were to make it proportionate, then this argument no longer is unfair. It's completely fair. So that's another way to think about assumption questions is if this sentence were not true, if the opposite were there, would it mean that the argument still works? If not, then it's usually an assumption. Okay, flaw in the argument. So far, most attention given to reproductive health has focused on women's fertility. Therefore, it's a welcome development that researchers are showing more concern about what impacts the fertility of men. Factors already known to affect sperm production range from whatever these things are. Now increasing attention is being paid to workplace chemical exposure as another factor. Some studies have found that the longer men work in certain factory jobs, the lower the quality of their sperm production. This finding is enough to identify factory chemical exposure as a priority risk and begin changing factory working conditions to reduce it. Hopefully this one is really, really clear to you guys. This is the correlation. There is a correlation, doesn't mean causation. So just because the longer that men work in these certain factory jobs, it doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do at all with the quality of their sperm production. There's no causation. So that's at least been identified in the study. So we just need to find that, whichever one will say that. Which is this one here. Just because lower quality sperm production is associated, so it's correlated with more time in a job, doesn't mean it is caused by that job. So with these flaw ones, as I've said, if you memorize that list of factors, then it's usually going to work out pretty well for you. Okay. Problem solving. How many soft toys will she have completed by 5:30? What do we mean by that? So we've got Becky who's making soft toys to sell online. Each one takes 16 minutes and then she takes a 5-minute break between finishing one and starting the next. She has a 40-minute break for lunch, and today she's working from 8:30 till 17:30. Now with this one, it's going to be very, very straightforward. There's no trick to it, but there's always one mistake that some people fall into. So I'll let you know what that is as we go along. So 8:30 to 5:30. Let's figure out how many hours that is first. So it's 4 plus 5, so it's 9 hours in total. We want everything to be in the same unit so it's easy to calculate. So we'll just put that into minutes and we'll say that's 540 minutes total. Hopefully it's obvious to you guys that you need to get rid of the lunch time. So we're looking at a total of 500 minutes of actual work time, right? And from here, she said it takes her 16 minutes plus 5, so a total of 21 minutes to make each toy. So now your next step, you might be wanting to say, okay, let me just go ahead and do 500 over 21. and then that's my answer. So what the trick to look out for here is that, remember, she doesn't need this 5 minutes at the end. So what that ends up meaning, the easiest sum to do is just going to be 505 over 21, because she doesn't need to take that break. It's fine if she finishes on the dot. So just to make it easy for calculations, we can just add the 5 there and do this instead. So that's often what people miss. I guess I could just do that in my... If you guys have to do it, I guess I should do it as well. Okay, so we're looking at 24 point something, right? So the answer is going to be B. But without, it's just on the borderline. So if we hadn't accounted for that 5 minutes extra that we don't need as a break at the end, then, because it says between finishing one and starting the next, in case that wasn't clear enough for you guys, then we would have chosen 23 and we would have been wrong. So please look out for that. It's a very common, like, little sneaky thing that they try to put in there when you're in a rush. Okay, now we are looking at, again, we've had this kind of question come up before, and I know some of you guys struggled with this, so let's take our time with this one. So we're looking at what percentage of all competitors took more than 4 hours to complete the event, right? And the other thing we know is that there were twice as many men as women at the event. Okay, so we know this is a cumulative thing, right? So we need to add, essentially. So all of these percentages together should equal 100, right? So we're looking at more than 4 hours, which is going to obviously be anything that's 240 minutes plus. And this time is in minutes. So we're looking at these numbers here. And we just want to add them together to get the percentage of each group that finished in over 4 hours. So for the men here, we're looking at 42% actually finished in 4+ hours. And on the women's side, we're looking at 54% who finished on the above 4 hour mark that we're looking at. So typically, normally what we would do if it weren't for this point here, if this were just a normal question, what you want to do is just add these two together. And that would be out of 200% total, and then you can just divide it by 2 to get like the average percentage. Obviously in this case it is out of there's twice as many men, so it's not 42% of the total that would be actually men. So the easiest way I think to do this is just to do 42 times 2, add the 54, and then you've got 138, right? And you just do 138 over 300. And that should give you the total proportion of people who finished in 4 hours plus. So I believe that would be 40, 80, 120. So 0.46 it should be, right? So it would be this one, A. Hopefully that will make sense for you guys. I think that's just the quickest way to calculate it. And as I say, like, it comes up in this form all the time. So as long as you know how to do it the first time, then you'll be fine the second time. Down here. So the answer should be E for this one. For this one, if you struggle with this kind of question, just like thinking of, let's say, what a shortcut or like a surefire way to do it, just sketch it out. That's the only way to be sure. And if you've done the rest of the exam properly, then you'll have the time for it as well. Okay, we've got a parallel reasoning question here. So we've got, for an earthquake to take place, there needs to be pressure generated between the Earth's tectonic plates. So for A to occur, we need some condition B to happen. Then let's look here. So the pressure has increased along this fault line, so we can expect an earthquake soon. A pretty nice, simple structure that we see a lot. For A to happen, we need B. B has happened, so we can expect A. And let's make sure, just so that you're really staying on top of the structure, we're expecting something to happen because this event has already happened. So don't forget the whole tense situation. So I'm not going to go through and say why each answer is wrong. I just want to focus on the one that is correct, which would be this one down here. So a ship cannot be steered without a rudder. So to break that down, for a ship to be steered, A, we need condition B, a rudder. This vessel is equipped with one, B, so we should be able to change course. You see how the tenses are also correct, so the vessel already has a rudder and therefore we should be able to change course. So even if this first sentence here isn't split into the same for something to happen it's still the same parallel structure that we have. Principle, I think I went through this in the first part, but remember, find the sentence, and I'm going to do that this time, and hopefully you guys can identify it before me, but find the sentence which just tells you the principle right away. Don't bother reading the very, very well explained example. That is just not necessary for this, So doing a little bit of a quick skim here, and I think it's going to be here. So as the old saying goes, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. That's all you need. You already know that saying, I'm guessing, right? So it's like, if you don't have anything, if you can't take it yourself, if you're fragile, then you shouldn't be giving out, right? So it's basically that. And the rest of it is just, we don't need it. It just looks very verbose. It looks very wordy. I don't want to waste my time with it. Now I just need to match. So I can very quickly find that it's this one here. Those who are rude to their friends should not complain if their friends are rude in return. If you can't take it, don't give it out. Very simple. So there's a good trick for you on the principle questions. Wow, there's a lot of draw as conclusion questions. So maybe practice that before Thursday's exam. So most countries around the world only, and the draw conclusion questions are annoying because they do take longer than some of the other ones like principle or parallel or conclusion, even flaw. So I think those four, I would say, are the quickest when it comes to critical thinking. And then the ones that take the longest are weakness, strength, and draw conclusion and assumption, because you need to read through the whole passage and you need to read through every answer. So maybe split those up, and then just kind of when you're determining timings, just say I'm going to give X amount of time to this and Y to this. And that would maybe be the way that I would practice. So let's read through the whole thing. So most countries around the world only allow citizens to vote in elections when they are at least 18 years old. Many oppose lowering this to 16, pointing out that at this age people cannot even many oppose lowering this to 16, pointing out that at this age people cannot even legally drive a car in most places. However, voting is not like driving a car, doesn't require all the things that you need to drive a car, which aren't very well developed in your teenage years. Voters are not presented with the candidates just seconds before they make a choice. Rather, voters have time to deliberate, etc. So you can get this even in your mid-teens. So this is the key factor that should determine who should be allowed to vote. Moreover, many adults much older than 16 are not knowledgeable compared to the 16-year-old, and they don't even think before they cast their vote. So it's a pretty obvious argument here. So should we lower it to 16? People's main defense against no to 16 in this case is that it's the same as we can't, if you're not allowed to drive, why are you, why should you be allowed to vote? And then the writer here is arguing, no, driving a car and voting are incredibly different things. Driving, you would at a younger age maybe not have developed the physical skills and responses you would need to drive well. Voting, you would definitely have developed the maturity and the thinking skills to do well. And then it just gives a whole host of other reasons as to why that is true. And then we can just look at each answer in turn and try and do some knockout. So the minimum age at which someone can legally vote should be the same as the minimum age for legal driving is not correct. They're actually just saying these are two totally different things, so there should be different ages. So this one is actually just incorrect. It's not even something that's not mentioned. It's just wrong. The minimum ages to vote and drive should be based on individual ability is definitely not discussed. They discuss as a whole when that kind of thinking and development happens, at what age. Lowering the minimum age to vote to 16 would increase the number of people. There's no discussion of that. We can't know that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We don't know. The minimum age to vote is influenced by the minimum age at which one can drive. No, it's just an argument against why we should lower it, but it's not something that is influencing it at all. There's no connection between the two, at least not stated in the passage. The average 16-year-old is just as qualified to vote in an election as many adults is exactly what it's saying. So a lot of the time, these draw as a conclusion are very similar to actually even the main conclusion, which is interesting. Okay, minimum range in which Isaac's true weight must lie. There's been a very similar question to this in like 2010 or something like that. There was like a temperature one. So with this one as well, let's just make sure that we know the trick for it. So we have 3 scales, and one says 93, one says 95, one says 96, and it's accurate 2 up or 2 below what they actually read, and we need the minimum range, right? So what's the smallest that it could be? So we kind of want to, I guess, center it around the middle score. But if you think about it, 96, this can basically be 94 to 98. We don't want the 98 side because that takes us further away from the ones that are smaller than it. So we're going to take this 94 number as the upper end. And then we have 93 can be up to 95, and it can also be down to 91. Again, we disregard that and we kind of want to look here, the 95 range. And then 95, obviously that just falls kind of like within this range. So we can basically say 94 to 95 is a safe range to look at, which is D. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's do a little change of color. It's getting a little bit boring. Okay. If there are now 4 times as many blue socks as white socks in the box, how many red socks are there in the box? Let's see what we mean by this. So a box contains equal numbers of each color of red socks, white socks, and blue socks. And then additional red socks are put into the box, which doubles the number of red socks in the box. 24 of the white socks are removed from the box and replaced with 24 blue socks. And then we have this final rule down here. There are 4 times as many blue socks as white socks. Okay, so this sounds more confusing than it actually is, I think. So basically you're starting off with X, a number X of red, white, and blue socks. You then, based off this information, we're removing 24 of the white socks, and then we're adding 24 of the blue socks, and that is equal to, so if this side is blue and this side is white, we now have 4 times as many blue socks as white socks, so it's the same as this basically. These two numbers should be the same. So now it's just a matter of solving it. You can just do this quickly and say 110, 120, so X is 40. So we started off with 40 of each of these socks originally, basically, and we also have the rule that the number of red socks have doubled in this box since we added socks, so E. Just write things out, put things into easy to understand formats, and you will be absolutely fine. Okay, which one of the following sets of numbers combines the first 3 numbers in the same way to produce the final number? Okay, so these numbers can be combined using addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, and the numbers are 3, 4, 18, and we've got it makes 10. So the only way to do that is going to be 18 divided by 3 plus 4. So it's this one divides into that one, and then we add this one to make 10. So we can just match it now. So 12 divided by 2 plus 5 is 11. So the answer is A. Okay, critical thinking. We've got a weakening question here. So online courses are becoming more common in colleges and universities, a worrying trend given the data that we have on how effective they are. Studies have found that students taking online courses are more likely to multitask compared to traditional in-person classes. After all, with no teacher present to deter you, it is much easier to be tempted by these distractions. And maybe I'll just highlight what I read when I'm doing this. So found taking online courses, what should I do? This is a problem because data shows that multitasking during educational activities reduces how much you learn. Indeed, students taking online courses perform worse in assessments, more likely to drop out. So clearly online courses are detrimental. So, you know, it's basically that. You're just kind of, the parts that are easy enough to skip, and I guess I'll go into a little bit more detail about what I mean here, is if you look at this bit, for example, right, checking your emails, listening to music, and scrolling through social media, there's no need to kind of just like focus in as hard, because when you're doing this exam, you are like very, very high focus the whole time for that entire 90 minutes. You know, you're just trying to read everything as carefully and, you know, whatever as possible, and obviously your brain is just going to get very, very tired. When you can't apply the same amount of energy to everything that you do, right? So when it comes to main conclusion, you don't want to apply the same amount of energy. You want to let your eyes kind of rest, skim the page, and find the important detail. And you need to just train yourself to recognize, if you see something like that, I'm just going to go, you know, just let it go across the page and just read quicker, basically. But yeah, focusing for 90 minutes straight is obviously not easy. Even obviously when you get to university, you get like 3 hours to write about 2 essays. So you can have a snack, you can have a break, you know, it's just a TSA that's super, super intense. So I promise you it gets better. Okay, so which one weakens this argument? We're basically saying online courses are not very effective because they distract students more, and we have data to show that people taking these online courses do perform worse in assessments. You could almost recognize a flaw in this argument here as well, which is that they're basically saying that by taking these online courses, you are automatically becoming worse in assessments, compared to the in-person ones. And the obvious flaw here should be, what if they were already not that great in the first place? There's no explanation of there's an attempt to explain what could be causing this, but it's ignoring a whole host of other factors. So anything like that will weaken this argument. So, which is this one here. So online courses tend to attract students who are also working part-time or have childcare responsibilities. Attacks this argument at its source, which is that originally these students were just not very good. So we can look at the other options. Highly focused students attending online courses still perform well in assessments, which is great, but that doesn't weaken the argument. Some students can only attend online courses because they have difficulty moving around. That's just a reason for who's attending these online courses. But, difficulty moving around, having a disability or something, I presume, but that's nothing directly related to this distract thing. And if anything, again, that could potentially... No, it wouldn't support it, but either way, yeah. There are also distractions during in-person classes, such as the presence of classmates. It doesn't really matter what's going on in in-person classes. Right now, we're saying online is necessarily worse than the in-person classes when it comes to distractions. And older students tend to be more motivated. There's no discussion of that. So I think that one's fairly straightforward. I think we went through that one even actually the other day. That sounds familiar now. Okay, so how many laps will the grey car have completed before it passes the white car for the first time? Again, I think we went through this in the live. It looks familiar. So a grey car and a white car, these two cars together, they're going around the lap. And then each car travels the same distance. The grey car is 12% faster. So how many laps will the grey car have completed before it passes the white car for the first time? You can literally just do 100 into 12 and see how many times how long it would take before it catches up 100% of the track. So obviously in this case, if you divide that, then you're going to get it goes into it basically 8 times to get 96, right? But what we don't want is we need to get 100 plus, over 100. So 8 would take us to 96. 9 would basically get us the rest of the way, and it would take us to 108% past the other. So we've lapped them plus done 8%. So it's on the 9th lap that the car would overtake the white car, which would be B. Okay, just a few more questions to go, trying to get through this fairly quickly. Okay, an assumption question. Let's find the conclusion, let's find the argument, and then let's find the assumption. So in the USA, interest paid on home loan is tax deductible. So up to here, right? And then I would skip the stuff in brackets. This tax break is known as a mortgage interest deduction, and it should be abolished. The poorest Americans generally rent. Rent cannot be deducted from taxes. Poorer homeowners, sometimes they're prevented from receiving the deduction. This means poorest Americans benefit the least. The people who benefit the most are the richest, and the American government could more than double rental assistance payments to poor Americans with the money lost as a result of this tax break. So it's again, that whole middle section is just kind of going on and on about the same thing, which is that this whole thing that's, in their opinion, I guess, supposed to help those who are poorest is only helping the rich, and therefore we think that these payments to poor Americans should be made rather than allowing for this tax break. So we can look through the options now. Government money should not be spent subsidizing private household consumption choices. It's not a problem with private household consumption choices, it's a problem with wealthy household consumption choices, helping the wealthy households, right? The financial benefits you receive from the government should not depend on whether you're rich or poor. That is the opposite. We do want it to depend, I guess, on whether you're rich or poor. Money raised by taxing the rich should be used to support the poor. Well, it's not quite there. That's a little bit too much extending the argument. There are no loss. I'm sure this person would agree with this point, but it's not an assumption that we need. There are no low-cost accounting services that poorer Americans can access is irrelevant, and the government should not offer tax breaks that benefit the richest most and the poorest least is a better kind of adjustment of what we were discussing before. So basically we're saying if you're rich, you shouldn't benefit, and that's what brings us to this final conclusion here, right? We should use this money to help the poor rather than help the rich. And the whole thing is about, it doesn't actually help the poor. They're expecting us to agree and say, why should we, why are we doing that? Do you not know that it only helps the richer households, etc. Cool. Problem solving. We're looking at what's the maximum number of rides that Amy's going to have. So let's figure out what conditions we've got. A single ride token allows one person, one ride. Mike and Helen are visiting. So these are the parents, and we've got 2 children, Amy and Ben, and then we've got another adult, Pearl, and they pay $250, as many rides as possible. Mike, Helen, Amy and Ben, same number, Pearl at least 2. Okay, so all of our conditions are there for us now. Now let's look at what options we have. So you can see here, we can either do the adult and the child entry separately, or we can do a family ticket. So with adult and child entry, just kind of totting it up like kind of roughly, we know that we've got 3 adults and then 2 children. So immediately, just straight away, we're looking at 90 plus 50 in ticket costs, so that's 140. And then we can compare that to what we get in the family ticket. The bundle price is like cheaper 99% of the time, so maybe you don't need to check this, but you might as well. So it's 120 for 2 adults, 2 children, but it includes the ride tokens. So to get the other adult in, we need to do $150. So basically $10 is the price difference between these two for 8 ride tokens. As you can see, each ride token is at least $5, or there's a bundle which is $40. Either way, we're not going to do the separate entry, we'll do the family ticket. So we've spent $150 so far. We now have $100 remaining for ride tickets. That means we can afford 2 of these, so $80 worth, and then so 20 tokens for $80, and then that leaves us $20 of the single ride token, so we can do 4 more tokens, right? So that takes us to $250. This is just a lot of kind of like, you just got to work through what you have to do. So now total we have 20 tokens from the bundle, 4 tokens from here, and 8 single ride tokens that came with our ticket. So that's giving us a total of 32 tokens. Pearl needs at least 2 rides, so that leaves 30 tokens for Mike, Helen, Amy and Ben, and remember they have to have the same number of rides. So divide that by 4, and we can't have anybody have an extra ride, so that's going to be 7 rides per person. So Amy will have 7 rides, and the answer will be D. Okay, just 2 questions to go now. Parallel reasoning again. What am I looking at here? To win business investment, you need a good product and a well-developed business plan. So to get some, whoops, where did that go? Okay, so to get some result A, we need to have a combination of 2 things, so B plus C, it's and, right? Your product is brilliant, so we do have one of the conditions, but you haven't spent enough time on the plan, but not C, so it's unlikely to get A, so not A, right? Cool, and so we can just go through and match. Again, I'm not going to bother going through the ones that are wrong. If you do need a bit of extra explanation on that, feel free to leave a comment and I can kind of explain it in words. Let me just find the answer and then take you through the structure of it. Okay, so the only way their team will be disqualified is if they miss a match and fail to notify the tournament director at least 3 hours before the start of the play. So A will happen if you have B happen and C. They couldn't attend the first match. Okay, so but told the director in plenty of time, meaning they won't be disqualified. So basically we have they couldn't attend the first match, so no B, but C, meaning they won't be disqualified, so no A. So it's exactly the same structure. Okay, so in this one, between which 2 days did the ratio of production to resources used increase by the greatest percentage? What do we mean by that? So at a factory, the senior management are monitoring the ratio of production to resources. If production is $200,000 and resources are $40,000, ratio is 5. So they're both in tens of thousands of dollars, and we have to figure out, I'm guessing, because it goes from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we have to figure out where was the biggest increase in the ratio. Okay, so, I mean, this is just graph reading, right? So I guess the numbers are simple enough that, again, this is one of those situations that maybe I would do at least a couple of the calculations. So we've got 5 into 10, so the ratio is initially 2. Then we have 4 into 10, so it's 2.5. And then we have 4 into 12, so that's 3. And then we have 5 into 12. How many times does that go? Like 5 into 12. 2 point something. Well, that doesn't matter anyway because it's not an increase. And then we have 7 into 14, so that's 2. Again, it's fallen, so it's not going to be from here to here or here to here. And then for Saturday, it's 6 into 10, which is, 1 point something. So again, all of these are knocked out. So it's either going to be Tuesday to Wednesday or Monday to Tuesday. Obviously, 2 to 2.5 is a bigger increase than from 2.5 to 3. So it's Monday to Tuesday, which is our answer. So I know I don't recommend this all of the time, but when you see an opportunity to just do some quick calculations and figure it out that way, just take the opportunity. You can see we didn't bother to do it too carefully, but at least we have that peace of mind that we've definitely got the right answer here. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I might try and do a last minute kind of exam tips, or maybe a 30-minute quick session on Wednesday, just to kind of give you some whatever kind of confidence you need. But I'm sure if you've come this far, you must be more prepared than you think. Just spend the rest of the time kind of making sure you have a bit of a game plan, a strategy, and have a backup plan, because things go wrong in an exam. So I think if you're in that situation where you think that you'll get in there, panic, and then lose a load of time, think about how you might make some of that time up. And maybe that's what we'll discuss, how to make a backup plan in that final session if you guys are able to join. If not, go through the rest of the questions, go through each strategy type, and you will be absolutely fine. Really good luck.